All right, and welcome back to the Prometheus Deep Dive, the podcast where we talk about the most recent episode, which is season 3, episode 8, Shit's Getting Real. And today, my co-host is Joe from season 1. Joe, how are you today?
Hi, I'm good. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about the episode and just the season as a whole. It's been a very good one, and just want to share my thoughts. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, let's just dive into it. So today or this episode, we saw a Jenny boot. So let's talk about Jenny's game. I mean, it's been a kind of a up and down path for Jenny. And obviously her team is just getting picked off one by one by one by one. So what did you think about Jenny in this episode? And for that matter, Jenny this whole season?
So I really enjoyed Jenny's game, especially with how she kind of had a power position back on original Aeron. Like her and Ben seemed to be the top two, and Ben was a much bigger threat. And I think we saw that materialize in him being taken out first. So I thought she was in a very good position, and had they won maybe just one more challenge, she would probably have had a much better time on day two. But it was really interesting to see how her game changed on day two. She seemed to be almost more passive. And she did say at the end of the episode, like, she never normally gets that far. It's not something that she knows how to play. Like, she doesn't know her play style. And I think we saw that. She very much was struggling to maneuver. And when she was like so publicly targeting Erin, who seems to be rather well positioned, I think that was kind of just the nail in the coffin for her, that she was not going to get much further than 6. So yeah.
I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. Jenny did play a very good game, especially in the beginning. She definitely was in a more power position, which even, we discussed it a long time ago, but we're not even 100% sure that maybe Jenny knew she was in such a great place. And I mean, I would argue it in a lot of ways, she might have been in the best place during day one, mainly because of her link to Tasha. She had, a ride or die essentially because Jenny saved her life. But, it's very interesting, and this is nothing necessarily against Jenny. I think Jenny was a pretty good player, but, a lot of people were really scared that she was going to be able to like convince people to rally to her side and like all this other stuff when like personally for me, and maybe it's because I know the behind the scenes stuff, but like I feel like she was a little bit more transparent in a lot of her efforts, which I mean, at that point in time, she's at the bottom anyway. So, of course, any of her efforts are going to be to save herself. But, I thought it was a little bit more obvious, a lot of the things that she was pulling, and people were very much scared of that. And, you do have Erin scared of it because of her name being thrown out. You have Michael, who definitely very much, thinks that, as we saw a couple episodes ago, and even Antonio and CJ. But obviously, CJ's got this really close link to her because they played a game together. So they did have a prior connection. And I would maybe argue CJ's number one might have been like Jenny.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, again.
It was just, I don't think she fully understood how to use those connections that she built. Like, she was on the bottom and she was very transparent, but she had that connection with CJ, but she never, it clearly wasn't enough, because he ended up voting bloody, which is another thing we can talk about. But yeah, her being so transparent was very interesting. Like, we've seen it a couple of times, like this episode when she was like, so who's the other name? If that was me, I would not be asking that, because you're on the bottom. Like, you're not really in the position to be asking the people in power, so what are you doing? Like, what is, because if you're doing something that doesn't favor me, I'm going to question it. Like, if I'm on the bottom, I'm like, what's the name? The name is Tracy. Okay, I'm voting Tracy. That's it. And I think, I'm not sure if she was shocked when they were like, it's you, lol. but she was just very transparent, but in a very different way to someone like Tracy, who is just like, this is what I want to do. And there's a very different way of them both being honest. And even plays like Bloody are very honest in how they play. And I just found Jenny's transparency to be part of her downfall, because it kind of read as unpredictable. And that scares a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that, because clearly, a number of people were very much scared of her. But you know what? Like, I definitely hear your point about her, saying all of that at the temple, and even, prior to the temple. I'd make the argument that, when you're in a position that Jenny was in, what other moves can you really make? I mean, because you could potentially just lie down and let the pieces fall where they fall. But then also, if you get out, then it's like, well, I got out and I tried nothing at all to, save myself. And you know what? I mean, it's got to be very frustrating. I've only played a handful of games myself, but I have never been in a situation where like my team is literally just getting picked off one by one. So you know what? I appreciate, her little bit of aggressiveness, at the end. It made for good content too. But yeah, I mean, like it just makes sense in my mind for a lot of people to use her as a number. She's got no one, and easily for the last couple votes, she's had no power in the game. And you are now going to be, with the exception of, Jocelyn still being in the game, you're going into into this next area of the game with 6 original members of one team. And in this challenge that we just had, I think it laid out some of the social dynamics pretty well.
Oh, entirely. Yeah.
So, but that's the thing. I mean, what's good for some people's games is definitely not good for other people's games. But kind of moving away from Jenny for a moment, let's just talk about everything that has also happened within their team life. We saw a lot of things at play. One of my favorite pieces, because this has got to be one of my favorite episodes, but right in the beginning of the episode, we see there are these 3 breakout rooms, and they're like 3 different social dynamics. You have, people thinking that Tracy's close with Jenny. We have people thinking that Tracy's close with Bloody, and they're all in one room. So it's like Tracy's in the center and she's got all her numbers. We got Michael and CJ, who are creating the headphone plan, which was really cool to see. And then in the other room, you have Antonio, who's probably at this point in the game in the absolute best position. And then you have Aaron and Jocelyn, who are also in actually pretty good positions too. So yeah, let's kind of talk about the whole team life. What did you think about all that?
So I found, especially knowing now what the vote was, that first group of Jenny, Tracy, and Bloody to be very interesting, because they could have been a really good group, and it ended up being they were the 3 who got votes. So it was just a bit of a what could have been, because Jenny, especially if Jocelyn had gone this episode, the first 3 jurors she was on good terms with. All 3 could have been ambassadors for her game. And say there's only probably 4 more jurors, she only needs 1 more good person, in that this is assuming Jocelyn is there, by the way, instead of Jenny. Mm-hmm. She could have been set. So that dynamic was really interesting for me, that Jenny did not be like, yeah, let's solidify something, especially because she had just voted for Bloody, I believe. Mm-hmm. And they were like, it's fine. They didn't seem like Bloody doesn't seem like someone to hold grudges. Like, I've played with her before. She'll just be like, yeah, whatever. And instead it was just, they set up this group where they were all like, oh, we could do something, and nothing came of it. And we saw that in the vote at the end. It was a 4-3-1, and they were the 3 who got votes. So I found that to be quite a interesting group. And then I also found the CJ Michael bit very funny, because there was a part where Michael was like, I believe it was Michael who said, yeah, no one's going to expect we're working together. Like, we're a really off the radar duo. And it's like all 6 people in this game just said, yeah, we need to be careful of Michael and CJ. Like, everyone knows they're working together. They're the most obvious duo. I think they could not be less clear about it. And then they're forming plans of how they're going to vote, that they don't even do the same. And it's just that dynamic. I don't think it's going to work for either of them, because it's a target, like a type duo who people are going to be like, they're going to vote the same way, even though they haven't. So people are going to want to split them up. And on top of that, I don't think either of them have had that much like social or strategic capital going forward. So that duo really needs to like either go against each other. So it's like, we took out our number one. That's a huge move, which personally, from my perspective, I don't think one of them taking the other out would be that big of a move. And then it's just, I just find that duo very confusing, because they could do so much more, but they're not. And even though they're not, it's still a huge target. Like, either do something good, like fuck shit up together, or send the other one to the fucking jury. Like, it is done. It is not good for you. It's just, it's so confusing to me. And then there's the final group of Jocelyn, Antonio, and Erin. And I agree, they are just set. Like, they're in such a good position. All 3 of them, especially Jocelyn now, because unless they for some reason take her out, she is perfectly in the middle. There's 6 people who can't all sit at the end, and she can be the piece that gets them together. She seems to have something established with CJ and Antonio, because they were the 4 with Jenny who were going to vote for Tracy, but then CJ didn't, so that's weird. She's also great at challenges.
Yeah.
And I think the first 3 jurors are going to support her just because it's someone from their OG team. Like, they, as much as you want as a jury, you're like, I need to vote for whoever played the best game objectively. There's not an objective way to do it. If you're just like, I like this person more, I was with them the whole game, like, they're just going to vote for Jocelyn if she can convince them. And she's good with her words, I think.
Yeah.
Like, she's persuasive. Like, I hear her talking, I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. Even if it's not, I'm like, okay, Jocelyn, good job. So I think she's in a great position. And then Antonio is also really good at challenges, really persuasive. Everyone likes him. Antonio, to me, is just like the big threat that everyone thinks Bloody is. But I think people are going to clock onto that, because he does have all these little talks with everyone. And if people just are like crossing notes, they're going to know. And then Erin is such a sleeper here. I'm such a big Erin fan. She just always, I think she's always been on the right side of the votes.
Yes.
Matty targeted her, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Matty went home, and then Josh voted against her. So she was like, okay, Josh, you can leave. Josh went. Then she voted for Louise and Ben. And then she was like, I want Jenny gone. And Jenny's gone. Then she has these great connections with Bloody and Tracy, who both want her who were both like, I'd like to be with you later on, possibly. Antonio wants to work with her. Jocelyn does. Like, she, in my eyes, is going to the end. Whether she's going to win, I don't know. But that 3, to me, is the final 3. That's how I see it shaking out. I don't know who wins, but I think that's the three. Sorry, I went on such a tangent there.
No, it's perfectly fine. I love it. So just to clarify though, so you're saying you think the final three is Jocelyn, Antonio, and Aaron?
I do, yeah. And I think all three of them have such hugely different stories and such hugely different receptions from the jury. I could see anything happening. And I'm excited if I'm right. I mean, I'm excited to see if I'm wrong as well. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we'll definitely see. I mean, that's all fantastic points of views. Especially because I do think one of the most interesting dynamics is the three, Antonio, Jocelyn, and Aaron. Because that's the thing, you can very well argue good points if the three of them were the final three. You can argue very good points. And I think, one of the most interesting pieces is Jocelyn, because she was the last member standing of her own team, and she could potentially easily have 3 votes on lock and then just needs one more to win it. And especially if you have, if you were to have like a split, between the 3, you divide, 7 votes up that way. So it's very interesting. I mean, we'll definitely see what happens. But, I really think this round was yet again another round where everybody was playing. Everybody had their own ideas of the game in mind. And yes, some people were playing maybe a little bit more passively, but everyone had their plans and they were trying to enact those plans, which is really interesting. And, going back to Jocelyn too, I think one of my favorite parts too is seeing how excited she gets for her plan and excited in delivering it, which definitely helps along the social line of things. If you come into something with a bunch of energy, it can be contagious, especially if when you're just sitting down, at a computer for hours on end, you're going to feed off whatever energy is thrown back. So very, very interesting, way to discuss and throw out your plan. But then we also see the opposite side of it, which I really want to talk about CJ here for a second, where, we hear CJ originally come up with the bloody plan.
Yes.
He wants this to finally be the time that Bloody's gone. This is going to be the big move that has finally been, needed to be made in the game. But then in my opinion, you can very easily read his face and he looks discouraged. He looks, very upset about it. And you even have him saying in his second confessional during the second half of the episode where it's just like, I could vote Tracy, but I could also vote Bloody. And I'm sick of not being able to play the game I want to play. But in doing so, it got probably his number one ally out of the game, which was Jenny. He prevented the tie.
Yeah, it's confusing to me that this kind of game, it's not about winning the battle, it's about winning the war. As long as you can get to the end and convince a group of people why you should win, that's all that matters. And if you don't get your number one target out this round, if you can do something that helps you get them out 2 rounds down the line, you still made a good move. And you don't have to go into that Ascension ceremony and be like, hi guys, so I wanted to get Bloody out at the final 8, but I couldn't. You just say, oh, I got Tracy out at the final 8 and I pulled in Jocelyn, Jenny, and Antonio because I wanted to do that so I could get Bloody out. You can lie. It's a game about lying.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I completely get it. You get petty in these games. You're like, I just want this person gone. And it's nothing personal. You're just like, I just need them out because they're pissing me off. And then we are blindsided by our own goals that it takes away from our overarching goal, which is to win. No one goes into these games to be like, I want to just be the one person on my tribe who gets called out in the second challenge as a threat. We come into these games to be like, I want to beat 15 strangers and win. So, and had CJ really just gone, I need to have this loss to have that victory, and voted for Tracy, I think Jenny would still be in the game.
Yeah.
I think Michael probably could have flipped, because flipping is something showy to the jury. And I think Michael is starting to realize he needs that. And CJ should have just tried and forced something. And that would have, again, showed that him and Michael were very visibly not this type duo.
It's true. I mean, we're definitely going to have some sort of fallout in the next episode when you look at where the numbers, lie. So, question is, are people going to own up to it? Are people going to be called out? But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If, he would have just voted the way that they had said, in terms of getting Tracy out, I mean, that would have been a huge move, and he would have been on the right side of the numbers for it. So people couldn't necessarily come at him too hard, because they would have also had to come at the majority for going that way. Yeah. So
I think the only person who could have ever been upset with him was Michael, because they made the agreement about the headphones and they still voted differently. Mm-hmm. But still, I think Michael will still be upset at him because he voted for Bloody.
And we know that it's not the first time he's done it either. I mean, he flipped on the very first vote of day 2.
Yeah, like he voted in the minority, which then got Ben in a whole load of shit and sent Ben home, which probably isn't CJ's biggest concern.
Yeah,
Ben got voted out, but it's like he's trying to weaken his position so he can have this huge story at the end. Like, if he can get every vote in to fall like dominoes from now on, maybe he'll have the best story at the end of the game and win. And if he's setting himself up for that, that is bold. But I don't think he is. I think he's just not doing his greatest, which is not good.
Yeah, I mean, the game is it's a hard game, and the variables are innumerable, from game to game you play. So, but kind of shifting gears here a little bit. I don't know how much we'll have to talk about it, because it kind of goes very much in tandem with the whole team life situation. But, in this challenge, the Target Your Nemesis challenge, we saw a lot of questions, said, a lot of positions revealed within this challenge. And unfortunately for you, you didn't get to play this challenge. You were voted out right before this last season. But although coincidentally, this episode is, even though it's deeper into day 2, is actually mimics your placement.
Yeah.
Jenny and you have the same placement.
Yeah, I thought that, and I was like, oh, well, she joins a good club. So, but if your initial is J, don't get 8th. Don't do it.
Yeah.
It's a bad sign. Yeah, this challenge is really fun. I wish I had got to play it, because I felt like people were almost too strategic with their questions. Just ask something like, if we were playing, I'd just be like, Casey, who do you want to vote out this round? Because that's just, all you need is a name, but it will cause so much shit. I don't care about who people's final 3s are already, because there's so many variables, and even at this point 3 is not a majority, so I don't care who someone's final 3 is. I just care because in minis, in these games where it's so fast, it is about round to round to round. No one is building these emotional bonds to be strong enough that a final 3 matters, and people are just trying to get too much information. I feel like you don't have the time to act on it. You just need, and knowing it's a blackout round as well, you just want to get a name out there during the challenge. Use the challenge to set up your strategic time, not about your boot order for in 4 hours time. Play this challenge to play the challenge now. It just, it frustrated me, but there were some really good questions as well.
Oh, I mean, there definitely were. It's interesting. I'm surprised. At this point, nobody has asked themselves a question. It's something even back in the first season, it's something we would have allowed, and you could be very strategic about it. But there could potentially be cons with that as well. But something that I did find very interesting was that Michael had asked Tracy, hey, what was your favorite challenge? And then he kind of actually used that to his advantage by immediately saying at the start of the next phase of that round, where it's just like, right. Oh, I didn't realize people were going to be that cutthroat. Like, I just asked Tracy what her favorite challenge. Like, then that really works again. It could work against you, but it could really work for you as well, because then it's like, well, then clearly Michael didn't ask us any of the hard hitting questions.
Yeah. You could ask like a very striking question and then also a very pulled back question and just be like, oh, I asked you what your favorite color was. Haha, silly me. And it's like, and then it also asks someone like the most scathing question, but you are losing the opportunity to get information, which is the best part of this challenge. Like,
yeah,
regardless of, and like I just said, I don't think you need this like huge like world building information. You just need like enough to get you by, because by the time the next round's there, it's going to be another fast paced round again.
Yeah. I mean, we did also see, though, like in addition to that, Michael did ask, he asked Tracy 2 questions. So the favorite challenge part, but then also the question about Jenny, because, it was on a lot of people's minds, like, are Tracy and Jenny together? And, Michael says that, like, it's a way to, let Tracy know without letting her know that there is that potential that everyone's seeing between the two of them. I mean, a lot of the questions were really interesting, but the big takeaway for me is that it was setting up this, people were looking at Bloody Tracy and Aaron a lot, and that's what this was showing. But it's also really interesting because another huge takeaway is that CJ and Michael are clearly at the bottom of their original team. And people, I believe the question was asked by Bloody, but Bloody's like, Michael, when are you going to start playing your game? So,
oh, that was a brutal question. And honestly, I think that is the worst question to get. Michael is like celebrating that he got it. But in these kinds of games that are so fast paced, if you get labeled a GOAT, that's your position in the game. And it's very, very hard to shake that than it is to get it. So if someone says you're a GOAT, you have to work so hard. And he wasn't trying to shake that perception. He was playing the rest of the round like, yeah, I'm a GOAT. And then he went with the safe vote as well, which only added to that. So I was really confused by what he was doing this whole episode, if I'm honest. Like, sorry, Michael. I think you will have played a good game, but this round, I'm not buying it.
I mean, that's the thing. He does say in his confessionals, like, like I'm going to take that. I don't remember if it's in the cutting floor episode of this, but he says something along the lines of like, I'm not used to, people viewing me that way. But that's the thing. It's like, is it a good move for him, or is it a bad move to continue to seemingly play from the bottom? Because we clearly have seen throughout this whole season, Michael, even though he might be viewed in some people's eyes as the bottom of the team, whether he is or not, I don't know. But, it is a question of, what is the best move for him, as well as really what is the best move for everyone else? Because the thing is you can't let those big targets go too deep into the game. I mean, let's look at, we look at Bloody, who's clearly the biggest target, even though there are some targets that in a sense are bigger, but they're just not as out as Bloody. But we even look at season 1 where Lauren was the hugest target in the game, the whole game. And
I said it, and look what happened. I still hold that against everyone, but sorry.
But yeah, you cannot let those targets get to the end of the game, Yeah,
like the way the game is playing out, regardless of whether she should or not, if Bloody gets to the end, she wins. is pretty much how the game is being written right now. So you really just have to play for like 4 final tribal already. You can't let perceptions form if you're not going to combat them. If a perception forms, you need to have either been the one who formed it, be okay with it, or get it in the jury because it's not favoring you. And like Bloody is such a big threat that people keeping her around is only helping her. And I'm so confused how she's still there. She's just like Lauren. Like they're both playing these amazing games and no one's doing anything about it.
It's always baffling. It really is. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Bloody. And in season 1, I love Lauren as well. I just don't understand it because if I were playing that game, I would have been like, okay, I could maybe see sticking to the numbers. Definitely in season 2, I could definitely see sticking to the numbers for a vote or two. But like, she's got to go because if she does make it far enough, you just let her slip by once, twice, 3 times, she wins a challenge and boom, she's there at the end.
Yeah.
But it just happens all too much, unfortunately.
Yeah. And also no one really, unless like the player handbook was different this season, but I remember in season 1, there was something that suggested there could have been advantages. And there was I don't remember what it was, but there was something I was like, there might be an advantage. So if there is in season 2, like the players don't know that. Bloody could pull out some vote negator and be like, yeah, I'm still not going home. So she plays that at 7, wins final 6 and final 5 immunity because she is good at challenges. She just hasn't got the right ones. And then if final 4 is the same as last season, where it's whoever's worst at the challenge goes, and she is one of the best 3. Bloody's won. Like that's such a specific set of circumstances, but people are just like, you have to take the shot because you never know when that shot may next come around. Like the next time you pull the trigger, that there may not be a bullet in the revolver that time. You need to always take the shot.
Mm-hmm.
And people are just, it's. I love Bloody. I'm the one who told her to apply, so I want her to win. But it's frustrating, like to see someone who should not still be there. Like she should have been on the jury with Ben. But I don't get it.
It is truly baffling. So before we wind things down, I actually almost forgot. We almost looked over an entire segment of this episode, but we have the stick segment with Louise. I don't know if you wanted to maybe make a comment or two about that. We see Louise's perceptions in the game, and then we'll kind of wind things down here on the podcast.
So first of all, Louise, I really wanted her to go further because like she was my fellow Brit, and I was like, oh, you gotta do better than me. Apparently not. So I was just like, oh, come on. And I mean, I guess David was first juror last season, but so I was like, yay, first juror. And I'm kind of still in agreement with her. Like, I don't get why she left. She was just kind of the unlucky one. And it just so happened that the vote fell on her, and I do wish we had seen more of her. And she made a great observation in that CJ is on the bottom. He still is, I think. Nothing has changed. But I'm surprised she thought Ben was going to go that much deeper because, like, he was in a minority position and the big target. Like, it made sense to me that he went out right after her. So yeah, I agreed with a lot of what she said. The Ben thing was the only thing I was confused by, but also I've only seen so much footage, so I don't know.
Yeah. I guess in her mind, it was kind of like a, he must have been making a deal, and, it came out that Ben had, put her name out there. So it's kind of like a matter of like maybe what was really going on. Like, could I really trust him? I guess he was really snaky. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of confusion, especially when you're the only juror and you're thrown in there. You're all by your lonesome, just thinking about every single variable,
Yeah, just twiddling your thumbs.
Yeah. All right, so moving on to our final segment of the podcast, we have the Ember Award. So for those who don't know, the Ember Award is essentially the MVP of the episode. Everybody has their own criteria, but I will hand out one Ember Award, and Joe will hand out one Ember Award. And as always, we start off with our co-host. So Joe, who would you like to give the Ember Award to, and why?
So I kind of touched on this earlier, but I'm going to give this award to Erin. I think Erin had a really good episode. So first of all, she got her biggest target out in Jenny, someone who was actively trying to get her out. And she was the one at Temple who said, "You're going because I wanted you gone." So in front of everyone, including the jury, Erin has credit for a vote, which not many people can claim that they got a specific person out. In doing that, she also saved a close ally in Tracy. And she kind of got, at the same time, slightly more of a lowered threat level, because people are like, I think I can beat her at the end. And then she just proved to them why they may not be able to. And she's just so perfectly in the middle. And I think it was just such a good episode for her. So yeah, I pick Erin.
All right. This one was really difficult for me because, like I said before, everybody's playing their games. We definitely see everyone's trying to make moves. Some people a little bit better than others. 3 people, after really trying to narrow it down, I came down to 3 people. But I think for this episode, I'm going to have to give it to Jocelyn. I think Jocelyn, as discussed before, is in a really good, point in the game. A lot of people want to work with her. She did try and make a big move and it failed, but that does not necessarily mean something bad. Had CJ voted the way he was supposed to, her plan would have worked, because as we did say before, CJ wanted bloody, Jocelyn shifted to Tracy, grabbed Antonio on board, which Antonio was thinking about it too, but even so, it was Jocelyn's plan and it almost worked. She's in a great position. She's good at challenges. And I mean, I guess that's also an overall game plan, but I think also her enthusiasm in want to take a shot, gets people excited. And so I like those little subtle moves, she's in a great position. And I think this episode even further highlighted it. And I think this is probably the first time we've really got to see Jocelyn be outwardly strategic rather than, kind of playing an under the radar sort of game. But yeah, I think Jocelyn gets it. But great gameplay by a number of people. So on that note, do you have any final thoughts before we conclude the podcast?
Just it's a really good season, really good twists, blackout rounds, very fun. Not keeping it secret who won immunity. That was also a really good addition to the episode. And yeah, I'm just very excited to see what else happens. So yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for coming on. So thank you everyone for tuning in. And once again, thank you, Joe, for coming on. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And on that note, we'll see you on the next podcast. Bye.